The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was going to be hot garbage, god damn. So if you guys aren't aware of the cancelled Amazing Spider-Man 3, essentially before Spider-Man came to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Amazing Spider-Man 3 was set to release in 2016, and then due to a bunch of pushbacks, it was actually planned for 2018, which was really weird because they were going to do like a Sinister Six movie in between. But anyway, the Amazing Spider-Man 3 was going to be absolutely garbage, and it was going to suck. And I'm going to tell you why. So essentially, if you thought The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was bad, but, you know, it had its saving grace qualities, like Gwen and Peter's relationship, that was pretty cool. I did like some of the music as well. It's probably one of the better soundtracks that a Spider-Man movie has had. Electro had a pretty cool design. There was a bunch of stuff to like, right? However, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was going to absolutely undo everything that was actually good about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then add even more bad stuff into this already stricken franchise. And I'm so glad that The Amazing Spider-Man 3 didn't happen. I am curious as to what the movie would have actually turned out like, but from some of the concepts, from some of the things that we know about the film and what it would have been, it absolutely sucks. So for those of you who don't know, in today's video, I'm going to run you through the key points on what would have made The Amazing Spider-Man 3. But buckle up, make sure you're fastened in because you might fall off your chair in absolute disgust at some of these things. So the first thing I want to talk about is the introduction of Norman Osborn. And I say introduction, you're probably saying, but Lewis, Norman Osborn died in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Well, fear not, because Norman Osborn was going to be reintroduced in The Amazing Spider-Man 3. However, he was going to be introduced as a floating head. Now, what this would have entailed, would he have been a villain? Would have the head taken over the goblin suit? Would he have, like, grown back his body? Who knows? But another thing in this film, they were actually going to start cloning old characters. So yes, not only is The Amazing Spider-Man 3 going to have Norman Osborn as a floating head, but they are also going to take story elements from one of the worst received Spider-Man comics in the character's entire history, which would have been the Clone Saga. So yeah, Norman Osborn potentially could have been cloned and then might have been the villain of the third film. That's absolutely outrageous. Who would have thought we would have got a Norman Osborn floating head in a Spider-Man movie? That just proves how insane Sony were willing to take this movie. And that's another thing. Speaking of clones, they weren't just going to clone Norman Osborn's head or whatever they were doing with that. They were actually going to bring back Captain Stacy. So those of you probably know this, but many of you may have not actually seen the clip of Denis Leary, the actor for Captain Stacy in the first movie, talking about the plans that they had for the third film.
Part of the discussion was that possibly in 3, there was this idea at one point that Spider-Man would be able to take this formula and regenerate the people in his life that had died. So there was this discussion about that Captain Stacy would come back even bigger in episode 3, and I was like, let's go.
right. So yeah, that's absolutely mental. So no, they weren't just rumors, they weren't just leaked concepts. The actor actually said they were talking about actually doing this in the third film, which is mental to me. Like I said, if you thought The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was bad, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was going to be 10 times worse. Because not only were they going to have a Norman Osborn floating head, they were going to completely undo The Amazing Spider-Man 1. So obviously, what implications would have Captain Stacy returning to the franchise had on the Spider-Man character and surrounding characters? Well, the thing is, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 was actually a really good film, and Captain Stacy's death served narratively for Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy as a massive moment in their relationship. And it is a part of what made The Amazing Spider-Man 2 really good, because the stakes of Captain Stacy's final word loomed over the entire movie. Peter is in love with Gwen, he wants to be with Gwen, but Captain Stacy said, don't go anywhere near her because you might get her hurt. And as much as people didn't like the Captain Stacy ghost thing, which, yeah, admittedly, it was pretty weird, at least it meant that Captain Stacy's death had a significant impact on the characters and the narrative going forward. But bringing him back by cloning him would completely undo his entire death. Which means that basically Peter and Gwen's relationship and a bunch of the reasons as to why we were invested and cared about their relationship in the second film would have also been completely undone. Which means it also would have worsened The Amazing Spider-Man 2, because a part of what made that film actually really good would have been completely taken away from it. So yeah, that would have been an absolute shambles. But not only that, speaking of clones, yes, we're not done on the clone situation. Gwen was also rumored to come back. Now, obviously with Captain Stacy, I may need to explain why that might be a bad idea. You know, he died 2 movies ago. Him coming back, you know, maybe some people are okay with it. Fine, fair enough. I shouldn't have to explain why Gwen coming back would be a bad idea, especially after the end of TASM 2. I'm not gonna lie, the ending of TASM 2 is probably one of the better endings in any Spider-Man movie. Despite the movie being really bad, comparatively to some of the best Spider-Man movies, the ending of TASM 2 was pretty good, you know? Like, Gwen died. It was a good ending, a good emotional ending for Peter Parker, and definitely lit up the room for TASM 3 to come in and do a job and improve upon the second film. But obviously, if Gwen comes back, then what's going on? Like, why? Just use MJ. You've killed Gwen now. Just use Mary Jane Watson. And I don't even want to talk about this scene. Imagine if in The Amazing Spider-Man 3, none other than Richard Parker got resurrected and came to be one of the main characters. Yes, this is another thing that apparently was going to be in this movie. Richard frickin' Parker. Yeah, I know it kind of comes full circle because, like, the whole series is about Peter's parents, and that was something unique to the TASM universe. But seriously, Richard Parker was one of the worst additions to this series. I liked their role in TASM 1. It was unique. It was kind of cool, actually. It was definitely different than anything we've seen from Spider-Man before. But don't use them past that. Like, it's cool to see Peter's parents in, like, a few scenes just to explain his origin. But then you go and use him in TASM 2. Okay, TASM 2, you know, a big part of the story is about Oscorp. Richard Parker had a massive stake in Oscorp, so fair enough, right? Okay. No, they were going to actually physically bring him back in TASM 3 as one of the main characters. Okay, what the hell is going on here? This ain't even a Spider-Man movie anymore. You got Norman Osborn's flying head, a clone of Captain Stacy, and Peter Parker's freaking dad, all on screen. What's going on? I can see why Andrew Garfield really hated Sony. So yeah, that was another rumor for TASM 3 that Richard Parker would make his return. And since this is actually a deleted scene from TASM 2, that this was actually meant to be in the final cut but got cut at the very last minute, shows that they were planning it for TASM 3. But yeah, on a more positive note, one of the better things that I would have loved to have seen in The Amazing Spider-Man 3 is apparently that Sinister Six movie that they had planned for 2016. It turns out they were going to appear in The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and they were going to be the main villains. So that would have been pretty cool. I guess despite the overcrowded nature of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and how they tried to focus on more than one villain at once, at least we would have gotten a Sinister Six payoff. And you know what? That would have actually been pretty cool. But either way, it probably would have made it even more overstuffed than the second one. We would have had the Sinister Six, which means we probably would have seen Risa Farnes return as Dr. Connors. We would have seen Dane DeHaan come back as Harry Osborn. We probably would have got more on the Man in the Shadows as well, the Gentleman. We obviously would have got Electro back. We would have got Rhino back. We would have got 2 other villains, which were looking to either be Doc Ock, Kraven, or Vulture. Either 2 of those 3. Because then obviously we also have Norman Osborn, his floating head. And we also had like a clone saga going on there as well. So whatever this movie was, you know what, actually, I'm interested. I'm in. I'm actually kind of interested to see what this piece of hot garbage would have actually been like. I'm actually interested. But yeah, no, The Amazing Spider-Man 3 would have absolutely sucked. It would have uncut everything that made The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 good in the first place. So I'm kind of glad that the movie didn't get made. But in the modern day and age, if Andrew Garfield is down to come back to play Spider-Man again, and he wants to do The Amazing Spider-Man 3 along with Sony Pictures, then I would definitely be down for that. Because it's fair to say that with new creatives behind the scenes, and maybe some involvement from Marvel and Disney, hopefully The Amazing Spider-Man 3 could potentially be a lot better than those original plans. Let me know in the comment section down below, do you want to see The Amazing Spider-Man 3, and do you want to see The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and Andrew Garfield get another shot at the Spider-Man character? With that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. If you did enjoy, make sure to like on it, and also make sure to subscribe, make sure to comment down below like I did say. If you want to support me as a creator, the best way that you can do that is by my membership. It's literally 99 pence a month, which is like, I think, $1.50 or something like that. Crazy cheap. You get everything from early videos, you get exclusive pins and badges and stuff like that, you get priority reply to comments, and you get to support me as one of your favorite creators, hopefully, if I am one of your favorite creators. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care and peace.